Hello, it's Janice Dru-Bennett, and it's Saturday, July 3rd, 2021. Happy 4th of July weekend. I'm excited to go over today's session. We are on our 7th session and wrapping up the 2 weeks around expanding your network and also focusing on booking one-on-one meetings and leveraging events for that. As a reminder, we've gone through the creator roadmap for both the social shift lift system and the career shift lift system. And we've focused on, with these past 2 weeks, on expanding your network, finding your Sherpas, your team, your challengers, your sponsors, your followers. And as I mentioned, we'll focus on booking one-on-one meetings and leveraging events, as well as starting to tap into some of the resources that we have to help us get to that next level. I'm going to do our 2 minutes of silence just to ground us and set my timer for 2 minutes. And again, use this time to clear your mind, be silent, breathe, focus on just being present. So here we go. Thank you for taking that moment with me. And now we are jumping into the thoughts around expanding your network and using one-on-one meetings as part of that. So it's great to extend your network, although not having the one-on-one meetings is going to prevent you from being able to really deepen that network. And so as part of the expand your network process and making a social impact, and if you're in a career transition, having those one-on-one meetings, I think, are essential to that process of expanding your network. And one way to find who to meet one-on-one is to leverage events. And so I feel like events has been my primary way of expanding my network, and would love to hear at the end of this presentation what others have found, their ways to identify, whether it's through referrals or other ways of meeting one-on-one people. But I think events have been the primary way that I've really extended my network. And I want to go back. Once you have the events, don't forget to have those one-on-one meetings and go into expanding your network. I've been thinking of this like expanding and then shrinking and going larger and then focusing again. So at any given time, you might be at a different point in that phase. And that made me think of the waves. And I just pulled these off the internet as some examples that just kind of resonated with me, and thinking about like sometimes we're at a very high frequency and sometimes we're also kind of at a slow frequency, and the events might have different frequencies. And when you also meet one-on-one, I like to think about, are you on the same wavelength? Are you kind of flowing together? And then also sometimes too much connections, I feel like that can cause this destructive wave too. If you're feeling overwhelmed, and at times like your relationships might erode. So there was a podcast I was listening to on deliveryhappiness.com it was, and they were talking about how sometimes we need to also eliminate relationships or think about what is stressing us out and what might be a negative relationship in our life to also remove. So that's something to also think about. I'm actually going to jump into going through the resources on a list of tabs, and then we can dive into our kind of collective group work at the end, which I probably will not post onto YouTube, but this is the just a few slides, and then we're going to jump right into the resources. And as I always mention, if you haven't already, take your bank code to be part of this group of people who know what your values are at a high level. And then we'll tap into using those personalities as part of some future sessions as well. So always recommend you to connect with me across multiple social media platforms, or just one, depending on if you're focused on one or more. And my own website is inkwhy.com. Now, these are the list of tabs that I mentioned I am excited to share. And one person I had actually met at an event in person in New York is Cathie Caprino. And I think after I met her, she became one of the most popular LinkedIn contributors. And so this is one of her Forbes articles from 2014. And in our last sessions, we talked about finding supporters. And I think this is a great article that talks about your support network, surrounding yourself with caring, generous, brilliant people. Be of service to supporters. I was also thinking about topics I'd be interested in writing about. And the first thing that kind of came to mind was the give value first principle, which is always think about what you can give before asking for what you might be able to get. And still think about what you want, because it's a two-way street. But I think being of service and giving is the best way to approach your network. And the tip of sending an email to a great new supporter once a week. So kind of developing that muscle of regularly reaching out to your network. And speaking up and being bold about your work. So if there's something new or there's something different that you're looking to do, posting about it, sharing it, and having those one-on-one conversations where you're asking for feedback, or being brave and asking for critique, as the next point is, and share what you know. So that's that giving of advice, of resources, of whatever that you can. And Cathie has the Amazing Career Project with a ton of free resources that are really helpful, especially if you're in a career transition or seeking to find what's really right for you. I think she's got some great resources. And then this was another article. So she sends out like multiple articles, and she has a 5 tips email that you would get if you subscribe to her email content. And then she also has this one that just came into my email box because I had resubscribed to her, and it talks about the 5 worst blunders most networkers make. So it's also good to know, like, what are some of the things that you might want to avoid. And she mentions another person. So I started looking into Dru-Bennett as well. And I have some links from her, who writes about being a power connector. And she describes her story about networking with Judy, and how she, first thing Judy did with Cathie was send her some 6 connections that were relevant to her. And I feel like that's something I also like to do, is connect people with those that kind of, I think, should meet with each other. So that's something I'm happy to help with this community. And if there are others in this community that are willing to help each other, I think this is a great tip for power networking, is to connect other people with those that they would want to meet with. So the blunders here are networking in the wrong places. So that's where, if I am, in marketing and I'm going to, tech programming conference, that might not be the right place for me to find other marketers if I'm looking to kind of, network with marketers. So it all depends on what you're looking for. And they just, she describes that here, networking at the wrong level for your goals. So depending on what you're looking for, if you're looking for team members or interns, then you might want to be talking to college students. But if you're looking for investors, talking to college students might be a little less relevant, unless you are speaking to college student investors. And having no way to assess the relative value of the connections. So that's something where, like I mentioned, we can drown in our network. So let's, make sure we're being targeted and developing a system to optimize your networking efforts. And then this is the one-on-one. You can have a lot of high touch, or having that high value long-term connections versus a ton of people you're just connecting with but never talk to. It is not true value. And when someone says your network is your net worth, if your network is not a deep network, then it is not actually significantly worth anything, because you're not really building those the true value between one-on-one connections. So I looked at Judys website as part of, and this is kind of showing you my train of thought, where I'll go from one site to the next, and then have a bunch of tabs. And for this particular presentation, I've organized the tabs to kind of tell a story and kind of dive into each one a little bit more deeply. And Judy has a bunch of great articles. So, if you have some time to think about your network and look at, myths about building your network, how strategic your relationships are. Again, are you in the right room? Developing your networking skills, power connecting and using your strengths. If you're a sales professional, and then she has this 5 + 50 + 100 method, which is really targeting your 5 closest relationships, or knowing what those are, and that might shift at any time in your life. Who are the 50 people who are most important to your current life and business? And then not more than 100 people who are key to your long-term goals. So like when I say I've got over 23,000 LinkedIn contacts, those are, people that I can reach out to at any time, depending on what's relevant to that network. But thinking about who is really relevant to my network can help me really focus on consistently reaching out to those power, 155 people in that overall list, which is much more manageable than even a few hundred or 1,000 or more. So again, recommend that you look at Judys blog. And there's 2 books that she actually wrote. So there's the 5 + 50 + 100 rule. And I believe when this book came out, it was on the top of the Inc. list. And then she just, I think, recently came out with this book that I thought was relevant, especially for those who are seeking funding, social impact, or growing a business. She came out with this Cracking the Funding Code book. So again, I'll include links to her books and these resources. Now, jumping into how to find one-on-one people to connect with, there's also social media and networks, and I've mentioned Slack in the past. So here I've shown you that, like, if you go to slack.com and log in, you can see your workspaces. And I've got multiple workspaces for my Inkwai email address, my Gmail email address, and then also my work email address. And so these are, and I'm going to pull up on my other browser, I actually have, I think, over 30, 35 different groups. And some of them have fewer members, like 11, and some of them have 1,000 members. And at any given time, depending on what topics I might be interested in diving into, I may kind of jump into that Slack to explore. And every time I go into one of these channels, I find something interesting. So it's a matter of there's so much information, but there's times to browse and then times to target and focus on kind of what you really want to spend your time on. I really enjoy the CMO coffee talks. As head of marketing of Inkwai, I join other heads of marketing and CMOs and VPs of marketing. They have a reading list here as well. So kind of keeping a regular intake of what's relevant to the audience and the communities that I'm part of. I found out about Trabaja, I think it's Trabaja, on LinkedIn, and it was a Slack channel that was invited. One of my contacts was inviting people to this, and a lot of it is related to, hiring or making introductions and sharing resources. And there's events. And so as I talk about how events is a great place I meet people, as some of these Slack channels will direct you to different events that are relevant to that channel. So if you're able to find the channels that are relevant to you, then you can also then expand into finding the events that would be relevant to your what topics you're interested in or what audience you're trying to reach. Superpath was one that was a content marketing one. So if you're a writer or, SEO or kind of really it's content related, and it's associated with a company that delivers content and kind of, I think, matches content people with companies. So they've got a reading list as well. So content strategy, job listings, all sorts of kind of topics that this community has curated. And then here's another one that I joined because I was part of the Female Founder Collective, and a couple ladies posted about creating a collective where we can cross promote. And this is where I have started the Clubhouse meetings on Sunday nights at 9 p.m. as part of the All-Star Collective. And there's people focused on different areas like health. Karen just did a 5-day detox, and my focus is on social, and there's just a different set of relationships, financial. So we're all setting up different times as part of the All-Star Collective to share our respective knowledge and support each other. And as I mentioned, on Female Founder Collective, they have a Slack channel, but they also have a Google group. And this is not something I've gone into recently. And I have a bunch of groups here that I don't know, or people, why I'm part of some of these groups. So part of it is cleaning this up as well. But like I've been part of the Center for Election Science when I was on the nonprofit board. So there was a group created for that. And then the Female Founder Collective will share messages with each other. And then my kids have their Google groups with schools sending out messages. But that is a way to kind of keep your, reach different networks if there are Google groups that you can plug into, and it comes in via email. So sometimes there might be more visibility for some of the messages that get sent via Google groups. Facebook groups is another place that I find, connections, and there are so many Facebook groups as well. So again, curating, but kind of going big. If you don't have a large network and you're trying to target or find the right people to expand, I mentioned that the Agora Pulse did an agency summit in June, and they give access to the recordings through, toward the end of July. So it's a 1 month timeframe where you have access to the recordings. And I had spoken to their Social Pulse Summit focused on LinkedIn last year, and have been following up with people who registered for that. So kind of it's an ongoing, and there's a group that was associated with an event. So there's different ways to continue to engage, before, during, and after an event, online or in person. And in the past, I used to go to meetups and look up who's going to be there. And if they weren't, schedule one-on-ones afterwards, or reach out to meet before to, depending on how soon an event is listed. And if you see someone that you really would like to meet, that is often a good way to kind of target the person who you really would want to have a conversation with. And as we're in kind of these social groups, LinkedIn has a ton of groups as well. There's a cap to how many groups you can be part of. And there's these events that are posted by LinkedIn now, and that LinkedIn continues to update their algorithms and their kind of functionality. So you can look at your connections and your contacts, and find more people through their events, as well as searching specific groups. And sometimes, since I'm at the cap of groups, I have to evaluate if there's some that I want to leave so that I can make room for others, depending on the different topics. And then diving into specific websites. So saleshacker.com. And as someone who's also interested in kind of sales and partnerships, and part of an enterprise, strategy team that's pre-sales, this is a particularly relevant kind of set of conversations that's being hosted on a specific website. And they're also, building out a podcast, and that's something I'll talk a little bit about as well in terms of expanding your visibility, because there's the outreach and finding people at events, and then there's also the inbound. And if you're in PR, you would know, being covered by the media or being interviewed on a podcast can help you get identified as someone that a listener or a viewer would want to meet based on your expertise. And so, and the other, kind of tip for when you're part of a LinkedIn group or a Facebook group, when you see a topic that you're an expert in or you're interested in, make a comment or, reach out to the person who posted it and kind of schedule a deeper conversation. And that's the way to also build a deeper relationship, is to see kind of what are the topics that are being discussed that are relevant to you, that it might, you might want to learn more about, or that you want to put your print on in terms of sharing your knowledge. Alpha is another example of a site that I've mentioned in the past that you log into, and they have a whole bunch of communities within Alpha as well, that might be relevant to your personal or your career or your social impact desires. And you can go into each of these channels. I'm in the productivity channel here, and see what people are talking about, and again, contribute, reach out, connect. You can message people directly here. You can gain points, and they also have office hours that they schedule with kind of key experts as part of Alpha. I mentioned Clubhouse, so we're not doing a July 4th, we're taking the holiday off, but the following Sunday on July 11th, I've been inviting people to co-host. I met Ramon Ray at an event. I clearly remember it was a Wix event, and he was at the front with a panel, and kind of just, it's really interesting how, things come around over time. And so Ramon has been active on Clubhouse, and there's other people that I've met in New York who I now am connected with via Clubhouse or on social media as well. And so the topic on July 11th is on personal branding and kind of small business success, or even if you have a small nonprofit or thinking about starting it, what does success mean and look like? So that's something we'll record and post to the Social Lift Podia website as well. So talking about podcasts, I had met someone who introduced me to this podcaster, and he has two. So this also aligns with me having two different kind of, the career shifters and the social lifters. He talks about Smashing the Plateau or Going Solo are his two podcasts. And when I talked to him, he said, listen through and see what isn't there that you would want to talk about. So that's something to kind of, for me to process in terms of like, what topic would I really want to go into and discuss with this particular podcaster to start, reaching this audience of consultants or coaches and people who are shifting from employee to kind of their own work. Another person who I met through another connection. So this is the other, always ask, as you start talking, other people will introduce you to those who you're looking for. And knowing that I'm talking about this program that I'm building for career shifters and social lifters, I was introduced to Cathie Demers, and we'll be on a live session, or it'll be broadcast in August. And she does a weekly 20-minute business success cafe event where people are sharing their offers and giving insights. So this is one where feel free to register for getting the weekly Thursday cafes, and then you'll be part of her network. And she's mentioned, a large audience is listening and viewing this. So kind of figuring out who you want to get in front of and finding those podcasts. It's even just Googling it, right? So searching for, the particular topic that you're interested in and putting the word podcast after it, or the word community or the word event. And then you'll see what kind of communities and events and podcasts come up with the Google algorithms. I've also mentioned in past sessions how Lunch Club is really a great way for connecting. I have an invite code for the main Lunch Club, as well as I'm part of the marketing club. So that's on the Inkwai website, that you can have access to scheduling one-on-one meetings that are matched via AI, and they ask you about your interests and what you're looking for. I just had a great conversation yesterday with Cam Woodsum, who used to work at DoorDash, and then he's changed his life to be a digital nomad, which I think is amazing if you're young and don't have kids. And he talked about how, and I asked, like, what's the one thing? And he said his freedom is everything website is him on a website. So I feel like that's really interesting to think about. Like, if you had a website, or if you were pushing forth a mission, is it who you are? Like a team business or a PR, like there's what does your website look like, and does it reflect who you are? So he has this site where he just talks about, how he's traveled around and built a digital business, has a, team that's distributed remote contractors, and multiple website within a portfolio that he's managing, including this website that he mentioned, which I think is particularly relevant for career shifters during this time when we are all, a lot of us are still remote, and thinking about, and I remember talking to him about, like, what is that shift going to look like? Are the companies that are kind of forcing everyone to go back 9 to 5 in the office, or if you're a particular company that requires people in person, is there going to be a lack of talent for those particular companies, because everyone, or a majority of people, do want to still work remotely or have more flexibility. And then as I'm looking at his remote work hub, he also has, if you want to contribute to his site, so that's another way to also get noticed, like apply to write or be reach out to be a guest blog poster. And that's, some people, that's all they do. The business is reaching out and being a guest blog poster, and kind of getting business from being, sharing your content on other blogs, and kind of leveraging other audiences. And so he's asked this list of questions, and maybe this will be something I'll put on my list, since I think, I'm part of a remote work team, and I think the future of hybrid work is here to stay. I do think meeting in person is still irreplaceable. So there's definitely that one, in the same room connection that is really needed. But I think we're going to continue to see kind of shifts in the world of work as it relates to remote or flex, the Flex Summit. And this was actually an event that was posted in the CMO Coffee Chat Slack channel that I just saw. So as you can see, I've got this kind of thread going through these tabs, and often I have like multiple windows with multiple tabs open, and that's how I think. And at times it's like, let's shut them all down and just have one tab open, one screen open to focus on that. And that's what the last 2 weeks of this program is. It's on, getting those results and kind of taking what we've learned and really diving deep. And this one is talking about the hybrid work model. And even though this event's over from June, all the recordings are still accessible too. So that's something we're setting aside some time to review content that's relevant once it's over. And I personally like to go over things at a very high level too. So sometimes I'll listen to speeches on 2x speed with the transcript on, and I'm reading. And then at other times it is about slowing down and really kind of pausing and kind of listening and taking a screenshot and taking in what the content is. So I feel like that this concept of, taking in a lot and then focusing and kind of expanding and kind of, again, shrinking and focusing, and making sure that you're kind of in flow with what's important to you and what you need at any given time of your own life, your work, the social impact you're trying to make. All of that kind of requires time to breathe in and out. Lunch Club also has started doing speed networking, and so this is where, if you are in that phase of I'm just looking to meet people and not kind of super focused, this is a great one. They have every 3 to 6, and I'm in the New York Lunch Club. There's the Boston one, there's different ones, but even though I'm in the New York one, I will meet people all over the world when I join in one of these sessions, and they do 15-minute networking sessions as virtual happy hour. And you can extend the 15 minutes if you want, and keep extending if you're having a good conversation, or if you just want to, get to know the person more. And you both would click extend the 15 minutes. Or if you don't, then a 15-minute timer comes up and says you're getting rematched. And then sometimes there won't be a match, especially if there's an odd number in the whole room of virtual networking and you don't even know who's in the room. So I think this is kind of a fun way to, it's like when you're mingling, when we used to have more of the in-person meetings and you'd randomly walk up to a cocktail table and meet someone there. You don't know who it is until you start talking. So that's kind of how the lunch club kind of happy hours work. I also did a search recently, or requested my list of mighty networks, and this is a way to build a course or to build a community as well. And the Job Salon is started by someone who's been a connection of mine for a while, and she used to be a recruiter, and she still is a recruiter, but she was with kind of a recruiting company, and now she's a Facebook recruiter, and she started the Job Salon. And I'll share a little bit more about that as well. The Guild is one with connecting female entrepreneurs. So I don't know if you can search Mighty Networks they might have some public ones. I haven't fully explored. Often I'm invited into the Mighty Networks, or I see the Mighty Networks link posted on a website that's relevant. I've mentioned Productive Flourishing. They have weekly session or monthly free meetings on being productive. So these are, again, our networks that are relevant to me. So thinking about what networks would be relevant to you, again, Mighty Networks has a great way to kind of connect. And some of these are paid, sometimes there are paid communities and sometimes they're free. It just depends on how whoever's running the community wants to run it. And that is always a recommendation I have too. If you build your own community, that's another way to expand your own network, is to think about what kind of community you want to build. And I know you may already have a community you're building for a specific topic. And I mentioned, so the Job Salon has a Mighty Networks group, and this is what it looks like. And there's discovery posts, and you can search the members. You can invite people to the network. I'm also connected to many of these people on LinkedIn and kind of had one-on-one conversations. And then Nikki Woodall, who's the founder of the Job Salon, also has her course on Thinkific, and really dives deep into strategy for kind of finding new roles, or kind of thinking about what you really want to be. And the question of, would you wait 5 years if you knew that was going to be the perfect role for you, and just being patient with it takes time before things come into fruition. And she's got some really great resources as well. And then thinking about networking, even when you're not looking for a new job, or you're not necessarily changing missions or whatever. Pat Romboletti talked about in her last Thursday night call that that's something you would want to do on a kind of a regular basis, is continue to network with people. And she has this great group that just comes in, and she talked about how 69 or of her network just got a new role, and so she's a coach as well, but it's a free group that you can join. And so that's a link that I'm sharing with this group too, to be able to go out and kind of promote, not necessarily promote, but like listen to her advice, and then share your own link, because it's all about making those one-on-one connections after. And she had 500 people on the call last Thursday. Another smaller event I went to recently was on Upstream. So this is all about virtual networking right now. And so Upstream has similar to Clubhouse audio rooms, and then they also are able to break out into video chats, so they can match randomly people one-to-one. And this was a great session I went to that was a writer at The Verge, and I actually got matched one-on-one with him, and was interesting to kind of talk about augmented reality and the trends that are happening in new technology. And CommissionCrowd is a site I'd been on a while ago that has kind of companies that get matched with sales people. So, and it also kind of has a CRM model where you can also put in your own kind of people you want to talk to. And then there are opportunities and leads. So it's an interesting platform that companies can use to find commission-based salespeople, or commission-based salespeople can go and find companies. And I was sharing this with my network for a while. I've been on pause with CommissionCrowd because I have a lot of other things to do, but it's just something at any given time. It's if you're in sales or you're looking for someone in sales, might be a kind of worth looking into. And going back to kind of the groups, I've mentioned also the Catalyst Galaxy. That's a great community to support catalysts who do a lot like me, really supporting environment, and they have a great program as well. And they're a paid membership plan, but they also have kind of a course that you can enroll in to kind of go through the resources with them. And the other thing I found is that sometimes a company that's delivering software for a specific audience, like HubSpot for marketing, or this one is Drift, they offer certifications. And Agora Pulse, I mentioned earlier, they also have an academy or some sort of certification that they're starting to roll out. And so Drift has a whole bunch of different types of certifications, but as we're talking about events here, if you are ever going to run an event yourself, learning about what it means to run an event, if you haven't already, this is a great starter kind of course. And similarly, Socio offers solutions, and so they offer great content about planning memorable events. And this particular one is talking about virtual events as well, and thinking about what steps to go through. What are your goals if you're going to run an event or go to an event? And clearly, as if you're an event planner or event manager, this becomes much more critical to really kind of go through all the details. And being an event manager is a lot more. If you've never done it, it takes a lot more coordination than you may realize. And often it takes 3 to 6 months or more to plan a successful and significant event. And here again, a comprehensive guide to doing it right when you're building a conference. As we're looking at virtual events again, being able to have the right technology and the platforms and apps. And jumping into this particular event, it's coming up in August, and I'm happy to kind of share links to it. I've been part of this network and kind of sharing this particular concept of acquiring a business, growing a business, exiting a business, or kind of a concept of and so Chelsea Clark with her paper route sells blogs, and so she's a blog broker, and so if you have a particular niche, this is the summit to go to kind of talk about monetizing and really designing the customer journey around that particular audience. And we're also going to be sharing a bundle of products, including the social lift system through this promotion with this group. So this is another way to, as you're growing, to kind of find the speakers who are part of us or who's organizing and kind of collaborate with the people who have this audience. Again, that's often about leveraging others' events and other audiences. So that's kind of the end of the links I have that I wanted to share in terms of resources. So thank you for listening in on the resources I have to share around expanding your network, booking one-on-one meetings, and leveraging events. And I will share all these resources as links in the YouTube and posting other places as well. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Hi, it's Janice Dru-Bennett, and it's Saturday, July 3rd, 2021, and we're recording the 8th session for the Social Shift Lift System. And today's session is the wrap-up for our Expanding Our Network component for the 2 weeks of learning how to grow your network and booking one-on-one meetings and leveraging events to do that. So as part of this wrap up, just a reminder, we've gone through expanding your network through finding your Sherpas, your team, your challengers, your sponsors, and your followers, as well as funders and investors for people who are looking for funding, and also booking one-on-one meetings and leveraging events and going through a phase of expanding and shrinking and focusing. The next 2 weeks, we'll be focusing on improving your social presence and getting those results to make a stronger impact. And also reminding you to keep an eye on your roadmap to make sure that you're aligned with what you've envisioned. So special thanks to Kashana for putting together all of the spreadsheets into a single template. And as we add any additional resources, we'll include it into the social lift template or the career shift template and for the career shifters. And we've added these questions in this last session in terms of some questions you can ask people who are in different categories that you're looking to connect with. And as a reminder, if you haven't already, go to crackmycode.com/INKWHY and get your bank code. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And I also have a YouTube channel, and my website is inkwhy.com. So just as part of this wrap up, we're going to just run through the different resources and remind you what you can get up to speed on if you haven't done already. The first is your gap analysis and assessing what your rating is for different skill sets or different what you'd like to improve on or what you think you're very strong at, and kind of getting your own rating. If you have a manager or a board, getting your board rating, or any peers, any people you're working with, or any collaborators, and determine if it's a development need or not. The next template here is assessing your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. So often we do this for a corporation or an organization, and this is your personal SWOT analysis on what you are seeing as your own strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Building out your personal development plan. So once you have identified your development need, working out actions you'll take, people who are responsible other than yourself, as well as any resources you might need, and any deadlines that you'd like to meet for your plan. If you're shifting careers, thinking about your next role, what you would want to be doing, what kind of person you want to be, what additional skills you want, and what kind of relationships that you have. Thinking also about your organizational values and how that aligns with your strengths and your own values. Also reassessing all those skill sets that might be out there, and thinking about what level you are at and whether you do want to improve or whether you want to delegate or find others who can supplement your skills with your gaps. The bank code assesses what your values are, and you can, I think, assess additional values that might be outside of the bank code, but these are all the different words associated with the bank code. And once you identify what your score is for each one, scoring from 1 to 10, this will actually give you a more nuanced score than the very quick bank code that allows you to just move around what the 4 values are in order of your preference to get your bank code. Thinking about your own personal mission statement as well. So if you're part of a corporation or a nonprofit, or if you're working on a project, each of those might have a different mission statement. And at any given time, your own personal mission statement might change, or it might be something that you've known for a while, that's your North Star and that you're following it. But at any given time, you might want to shift your personal mission, or if you're changing companies or working with a new nonprofit, then those might change over time as well. And thinking about if there are any other mission statements, like if you have a family, whether your family has a mission statement, or a department that you want to put together, for example, the marketing department's mission statement. We went over rocks, stones, sand, and water. So thinking about, short term all the way to long term, and your timeline might look different, and you may not want to fill out every single one of these, but as you look at what's going on over the next 6 weeks, and you can identify exact deadlines for each one of these as well by adding in dates, and then the rocks are the big goals, and then the stones would be supporting the rocks, and then the sand would be even smaller breakdown of tasks that you might do. And then the water is ongoing support for those rocks. Your social audit is looking at your own personal social media presence. And this is really effective for understanding where your reach is and where your network is, what engagement levels there are. You can do this manually, or there are tools and software out there that can help you with your social audit and your website audit as well. And Kashana put together her own, or this is a template where you can write over it with your own nonprofit. If you are part of a nonprofit organization or have a mission with multiple social media presences, creating that list for yourself to assess where you're at. If you have a startup, so you can have multiple lists of, if you're working for a corporation, looking up their social media presence may give you a better sense of what your corporate presence is, as well as if you are starting a nonprofit or part of a growing nonprofit, getting a snapshot and then creating multiple copies over time, or kind of looking at what the trends are over time for your social media presence can really be effective. And finally, for this last 2 weeks, we've been really working on who you want to expand your network to, thinking of 3 top priorities in each of these categories. Who are the people you admire? Who do you need on your team to help you grow? Who will push you or challenge you or collaborate with you even? Who will give you those opportunities or give you money or other resources, provide you grants, and how will you spread the word? By finding the right people, and as you're networking one-on-one or at larger events, coming up with the list of questions that are appropriate for you to ask, as well as the list of what you want to say, depending on who you're talking to as well. So creating that messaging, and that's part of the next 2 weeks. And so again, this is a very short session just to wrap it up. And I hope that you are finding this program useful as you're building out your 6-month plan, your 12-month plan, and 3 years, 10 years, or 30 years into the future.